A very good evening and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Primetime News on TV1. I am Ravi Gamage.
And I'm Naveksha Gunasekara. We start off by taking a look at your headlines for tonight.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Harupena discounts of up to 30% off for frames and sunglasses from Vikramarchi Opticians.
Group of youth who escaped the clutches of terrorists in Myanmar reveal details of their ordeal.
දානගස්සලා මුණින් අතට හරවලා ගැහුවා අපිට හොඳටම
කරන්ට් ගැල්ලුවා දවස් දෙකක්. කොල්ලෝ කෑලි වලට පාව විකුණනා මිනිස්සු මාව එළියට දාද්දී මම හිතන්නේ විකුණලා තිබ්බා.
CID raid office of the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Health, Saman Ratnayaka, in search of details behind the fake medicine scam. Former minister cannot evade responsibility. Many stakeholders demand for broader investigations.
ඒ මොහොතේ සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍ය ධූරයේ දරු කෙහෙලි රඹුක්වැල්ල ඇමතිවරයාගේ සිට මේ ක්‍රියාවලියට සම්බන්ධ සියලු දෙනා මේ අපරාධයේ මේ වංචාවේ මේ දූෂණේ වගකියුත්තන් බවට පත්.
Kanchana challenges Anura again. Says no issue in the Punakari solar power project. Do not sell telecom. Trade unions protest. Who is the next presidential candidate? Vajira and Ravi reveals details of President Vikramasinghe's aspirations.
ඇත්තටම වූ පිං ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් නිසා තමයි මුළු මහත් ජාතියක් විනාශ වෙලා තිබෙන වෙලාවක මුළු මහත් ජාතියක් වෙනසිලා තිබෙන වෙලාවක ශ්‍රී ලාංකික මහ ජනතාවට පිනක් මෙන් ජීවත් වීමේ වාග්ය උදා කරලා තිබෙන්නේ.
ජනාධිපතිවරයාට වශයෙන් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ නිර්පාක්ෂික දේශපාලන ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් වශයෙන් කටයුතු කිරීම අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම වෙනවා.
Dilshan Madhushankar joins Mumbai Indians for 180 million rupees. Stock sold for the highest value in IPL history.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Harupena discounts of up to 30% off for frames and sunglasses from Vikramarchi Opticians.
Starting off your local news tonight, 5 Sri Lankans who were held captive in an area close to the Myanmar-Thailand border have managed to escape.
They were being held captive by a group of terrorists in the area. Now these are the details of their ordeal. This area, located along the Myanmar-Thailand border when observed on Google Maps, is called Cyber Criminal Area. This area, located 25 kilometers from the city of Myawaddy in Myanmar, is under the control of terrorists. About 50 Sri Lankan boys and girls who were promised employment opportunities in the IT sector in Thailand are currently being held captive in this area. It has been revealed that 2 Sri Lankans had been deceiving Sri Lankan youth with promises of providing employment opportunities in Thailand and selling them to terrorists for $5,000. These Sri Lankan youth have been sent to Thailand on visit visas. Several of the youth who escaped the clutches of these terrorists spoke to Newsfirst about their ordeals.
අපි ඇත්තටම තායිලන්ඩ් වල අරන් ගියේ සුපර් මාකට් එකක ඉන්වෙන්ටරි ජොබ් එකක් දෙනවා කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ බිල් එන්ටර් කරන්න නම් ඒක කරන්න තිබ්බේ ජොබ් එක අපි සෝෂල් මීඩියා හරහා උදාහරණයක් වශයෙන් Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok වගේ දේවල් වලින් අපි ගෑනු කට්ටිය වගේ රඟපානවා. අපි ඒ කියන්නේ ඇමරිකාව, නෙදර්ලන්තය, ඕස්ට්‍රේලියාව, ඕස්ට්‍රියා ඒ වගේ ධනාත්මක රටවල් වලින් අපි මිනිස්සු අපි අල්ල ගන්නවා. අපේ ප්‍රොෆයිල් ගෑනු විදිහට අපි හදාගෙන ඇත්තට මේ ගෑනු කට්ටිය ඒ අදාළ මියන්මාර් අපේ කම්පැනි ඉන්නවා. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලන්ට වීඩියෝ කෝල් එකක්, ඔඩියෝ කෝල් එකක් ගන්න කිව්වට පස්සේ අපිනේ මේ ෆේස් කරන්නේ අදාළ ගෑනු කට්ටිය ඉන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ මේක පොඩි ජාවාරමක් නෙමේ, ලොකු ජාවාරමක්. දවසේ වැඩ කරන්නේ පැය 18න් නම් පැය 9ක් යද්දී අපි එක පාරිභෝගිකයෙක්, එක කස්ටමර් කෙනෙක්, එක සල්ලිකාර මිනිස්සෙක් අපි හෙව්වේ නැත්නම් අපිට කන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. පළවෙනි පැය 9 ඇතුළත කන්න බොන්න බෑ, වතුර බොන්න බෑ. දනගස්සලා මුණින් අතට හරවලා ගැහුවා අපිට හොඳටම, මට ගැහුවා හොඳටම.
4 men and 1 woman from among the youth held captive in Myanmar had successfully fled on the 4th of November. They said that the group of Sri Lankans who were taken from Thailand to the terrorist-controlled area in Myanmar on the 27th of April this year had been used as cyber slaves for a period of 6 months. These 5 Sri Lankans were able to escape captivity while they were being taken to another terrorist group in Laos through Thailand after they were sold to them.
Thailand, Laos, බෝඩර් එක කිට්ටුව දිනවා කිව්වා ටච් ලීක් කියලා ඔය වගේම ප්ලේස් එකක්. එතකොට අපි එතනට අරින්න තමයි අපි එතනට වික් ඇත්තටම අපි කට්ටිය වික්කා. අපිත් එක්ක හිටියා පිරිමි ළමයි 4 දෙනෙක් ගෑනු ළමයි. ඊට පස්සේ ගෑනු ළමයයි පිරිමි ළමයෙකු එක වාහනයකට දැම්මා. ඊට පස්සේ මමයි තව මලිලත් දෙන්නෙකු එක වාහනයකට දැම්මා. රුපියල් ලක්ෂයක් වගේ අතේ තිබ්බා. අපි තායිලන්ත රටට ආවට පස්සේ වාහනේට දැම්මට පස්සේ අපි කිව්වා වාහනේ හිටවන්න අපිට කන්න ඕන අපිට ටොයිලට් එකට ඕන යන්න. අපි ඒ කියන්නේ පයින් තමයි මේ මිනිස්සුන්ට කිව්වා. ඊට පස්සේ අන්තිමට බැරිම දන මම සල්ලි දෙක කරා මේක කරන්න මෙහෙම කරන්න එපා මේක බැරිම දන ඉතින් අපිට කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. කැබ් එකක් මම හෑන්ඩ් බ්‍රේක් එක ඇදලා ස්ටියරින් වීල් එක වම් අත පැත්තට කරකවලා වාහනේ හිටෙව්වා. ඊට පස්සේ ඒකම තව මල්ලි කෙනෙක් එයාට මම කියලා තිබ්බේ එයාට මිඩි ස්ක්‍රූ ටික ගහවා මූණට. ඊට පස්සේ අපි ෂීට් බෙල්ට් එක ලොක් එක ඇල්ලලා ඉවරලා මනුස්ස එළියට දාලා ගැහුවා. ඇත්තටම ගැහුවෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන්නේ දත් කැඩෙනකන් ගැහුවා. මොකද අපි 3 දෙනෙක් හිටියා. නමුත් ඒක දැකපු අනිත් වාහනේ අපි හිටිය ගෑනු ළමයෙකුයි පිරිමි ළමයෙකුයි ඒ දෙන්න කඩාගෙන ඒ වාහනේ හිටවන්න නැතු ඉස්සරහට ගියා. ඇඟේ තියෙන ඇඳුම පිටින් අපි දිව්ව අපේ પાස්පෝර්ට් ටික අතේ තියාගෙන දිව්වට පස්සේ ගෙදරකට ගියා. ඒ ගෙදරින් අපි ගිහලා වැන්ද අපි සල්ලි ඉල්ලුවා. අපි එයාපෝට් එකට රැන්න කිව්වා. පොලිසියට රැන්න කිව්වා.
A boy and a girl who were taken in another vehicle managed to escape as well. They had gone to a small airport in Thailand.
රතු කුරුස සංවිධානයේ මේ මිස්ලට දෙවිවරුන්ට වගේ සලකනවා අපි වඳිනවා ඒගොල්ලන්ට. ඇත්තටම ඒගොල්ලන්ව සම්බන්ධ කරන් අපි හිටියා. ඒගොල්ලන් කිව්වා හරි ඕගොල්ලන් තායිලන්ත වලින් බෝඩරේ පැන්නට පස්සේ ඕගොල්ලන් පයින්න. අපි ඕගොල්ලන්ව ගන්න කොහේ හිටියත් එනවා.
Who is behind this human trafficking operation?
ලංකාවේ ඉන්න මේ දෙන්න මේ සෂි කියන එක්කෙනා ඉන්නේ ගම්පහ. එතකොට ප්‍රභාත් කියලා ඉන්න එයා තමයි ඒක කෝඩිනේට් කරේ. ඒ දෙන්න තවමත් මේක අරිනවා. මේකට හරි ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් ගන්න කියලා මම රජයෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
අපි යවුවේ ගම්පහ ශාසික ඩිලේන් සහ තව රටම එක්කෙනෙක් තමයි ප්‍රභාත් ඉන්දුනිල් කියලා. ඇඳගෙන හිටපු ඇඳුම් පිටිම තමයි අපි ලංකාවට ආවේ.
Meanwhile, another Sri Lankan youth from Chilau who was sold to these terrorists in Myanmar said he was electrocuted and subject to brutal torture.
ඉස්සෙල්ලාම අපි අරගෙන ඉවරලා බෙන්දිසි කරන වගේ එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේ සල්ලි වලට මේව කරලා පස්සේ මේ කම්පැනි එක ඇතුළට අරන් ගිහලා කියනවා මෙහෙමයි මේ Facebook එකෙන් කට්ටිය හොයාගන්න ඕන යාලා. හොයලා දෙන්න ඕන අනිවාර්යෙන් දවසට 3ක් හොයන්න ඕන. 3ක් හැවෙ නැත්නම් පනිෂ්මන්ට් හම්බ වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ එහෙම කරන්න බෑ කිව්වා කියලා ඉවරලා ඒගොල්ලෝ වැඩ කරන වෙනම මිලිටරියක් ඉන්න. ඒගොල්ලෝ අරන් ඇවිල්ලා කට්ටිය මැද්ද ගැහුවා පළවෙනි පාර. උඩු 4ක් ඉවර කරගෙන නිකන් ගැහුවා. ඊට පස්සේ ආය ඇතුළට අරන් ගියා. ඇතුළට අරන් ගිහිල්ලා ඒගොල්ලන් වෙනම මිලිටරියක් තියෙන ඇතුළේ පොලිසියක් වගේ තියෙනවා. හිර කුඩු තියෙනවා. ඒ වස්සට අරන් ගිහිල්ලා ආය ගැහුවා. ගහලා ඉවරලා උඹ හොරකම් කරන්න ඕන. ඊට පස්සේ කරන්ට් එක ඇල්ලුවා දවස් 2ක්. කරන්ට් එක දවස් 2ක් අල්ලලා පොළොර කෑලි වලට පාව විකුණනවා. මිනිස්සු ශරීර කොටස් වලට පාව විකුණනවා. මාව එළියට දාද්දී මම හිතන්නේ විකුණලා තිබ්බේ. ඊට පස්සේ මාව මෙසොට් පව් කරලා වෙනම තැනකට අරයි යන්න ගිහිල්ලා ඒ අස්සෙන් පැනලා බෑග් එකේ පවා දාලි වෙලා පාර කිලෝමීටර් 3ක් විතර දුවලා ඊට පස්සේ කන්න මොණ්ඩක් නැතුව අන්තිමට හිටිය හාමුදුරු කෙනෙක්. ඒ හාමුදුරු කෙනෙක් මාර්ගෙන් තමයි එයා තමයි මගේ පෙන්වන්නේ සම්පූර්ණ ලංකාවට එන්න. මම රණ්ඩුනේ හේතුවත් මම ඒ කියන්නේ මම හොයපු කෙනෙක්ගේ කස්ටමර් කෙනෙක් නැති වුණා. බෙල් වල දාගෙන සල්ලි ඔස්සුනා. හින්දා. අවුරුදු 19 කරේ 20 කරේ ගෑනු ළමෙක් ඉන්නවා බැංකොක් වල හිරේ. ওই ප්‍රශ්නෙට ගිහිල්ලා ඒගොල්ලෝම අල්ලලා දීලා. ඒගොල්ලෝ එළියට දාලා ඒගොල්ලෝ පොලිසියට කතා කරලා තල්ලලා දෙන වැඩ කරනවා. ඒගොල්ලෝ මොකද මේ විස්තර ටික අරන් වෙන රටකට යයි කියලා.
The Department of Immigration and Immigration has launched an investigation into this matter. The Sri Lankan embassy in Myanmar said that steps are being taken to rescue the remaining 56 Sri Lankans who are being held captive by the terrorists. The embassy also added that since Myanmar is under military rule and since the area where the Sri Lankans are being held has not yet been captured by the military, there are several difficulties in rescuing them. Chinese organized criminal gangs have been engaging in scamming people online from areas located along the Thailand-Myanmar border, and they have been using youth from countries like Sri Lanka as cyber slaves. A June 2023 report by the United States Institute of Peace, or the USIP, sheds light on this concerning trend. Pushed out of China, these criminal groups have found fertile ground in Southeast Asia, establishing havens like Shwe Koko, a newly built town in Myanmar bordering Thailand. The USIP report and a subsequent August 2023 report by the UN Human Rights Office highlights the urgent need for coordinated international action to dismantle these criminal networks and liberate the victims trapped within them.
The investigations launched into the incident where fake medicine was administered to patients suffering with serious nervous issues under the guise of administering them with human immunoglobulin vaccine.
The CID today raided the office of Dr. Saman Ratnayaka, the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Health, based on a court warrant. CID officials searched the office for about 5 hours.
The subject of medicine is a complicated one. However, these details surrounding this incident must be understood well. Human immunoglobulin is a vaccine administered to develop immunity in patients who suffer from various nervous conditions. 2,985 vials of the 3,985 vials of this so-called human immunoglobulin vaccine produced by the Sri Lanka company named Isolus Biotech had been administered to patients across Sri Lanka. It has now been revealed that this company has not been approved to produce this vaccine. The permit they had produced allowing them to supply these medicines to the Ministry of Health without a valid registration is also a forgery. The more serious issue is the fact that the vials provided to the Ministry of Health and later administered to patients did not contain even an ounce of human immunoglobulin. According to the former Ministry of Health himself, these vials contain saline or similar substance. This matter is now before a court of law. The owner of this fraudulent company, along with the director of the Medical Supplies Division, Dr. Kapila Vikramanayaka, the former Secretary of the Ministry of Health, Janaka Sri Chandragupta, and 3 others have been remanded over this incident. The Maligakanta Magistrate Court has ordered the Director General of Health Services to seal the office of the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Health, Dr. Saman Ratnayaka, yesterday, when the former Secretary of the Ministry of Health was produced before the magistrate. The Criminal Investigations Department searched the office of the Additional Secretary to the Ministry and also recorded a statement from him. The Joint Council for Professionals in Supplementary Medicine today pointed out that there are many power people behind this scam.
අපි ඉතා පැහැදිලිව කියනවා ඊයේ දවසේ හිරගත වුණේ මේ රටේ සෞඛ්‍ය කළමනාකරණය. ඊයේ දවසේ හිරගත වුණේ මේ රටේ සෞඛ්‍ය පරිපාලනය. ඊයේ දවසේ හිරගත
We clearly state that the management and administration of the health sector in Sri Lanka was imprisoned yesterday. The corrupt procurement procedure in the health sector was imprisoned yesterday. If we are to correct this procedure, then there is another stage of these imprisonments that has to take place. How does the Secretary of the Ministry of Health operate? The letter of appointment for all secretaries to ministries clearly state that they are to operate based on the advice and orders of the minister. Despite what the President's counsels who come to court say, these arrests have been made purely based on documentary evidence. The CID and the court have time and time again stressed that documentary evidence cannot be disregarded as lies. No matter how corrupt the decision-making process at the ministry is, there is a chain of command and all decisions are communicated through documents. Since we have a process like that, the CID has been able to prosecute those involved in this based on documentary evidence. But like I said before, the Secretary of the Ministry has to work based on the advice and orders of the Minister, based on his letter of appointment. There is no proper procedure on how the Minister should or has to communicate these directions to the Secretary of the Ministry. The procedure is weak and this procedure is used to wrongly influence people. At the Ministry of Health, we would like to clearly state that the former Secretary to the Ministry of Health had acted completely based on the orders, decision and influence of the former Minister of Health, more so than any secretary before him. We cannot consider the decisions made by the Secretary of Health to be made on his own accord. We would like to state that the Secretary of Health, who was arrested, has a responsibility to the nation. That is to reveal the remainder of the story. If we are to understand this, he will have to reveal details of the instructions that he received verbally and how he was influenced, threatened, and who did those things. If this Secretary of Health fails to do this as well, he would have failed at fulfilling his final responsibility.
ඔහුට ලිඛිත නොවන අයුරින් ලැබිච්ච නියෝග මොනවද බලපෑම් මොනවද තර්ජන මොනවද ඒවා කරේ කවුද කියන එක අධිකරණයේදී හෙළිදරව් කරන්න වෙනවා. ඒකත් කරේ නැත්තම් මේ සෞඛ්‍ය ලේකම්වරයා මං හිතන්නේ අවසාන වගකීමත් පැහැර හරින කෙනෙක් වෙනවා.
ජාතික ඖෂධ නියාමන අධිකාරියේ මේ ආරක්ෂක විධිවිධාන සියල්ල ඉවත් කරලා benchmarking process නවත්.
The intention behind the National Medicines Regulatory Authority removing all of these procedures, stopping the benchmarking process, removing the WRO committee and removing the seniors is now very clear. We spoke about this at the time. When we were highlighting these issues, those who had their ears closed are now listening to us. We request for the investigation into these matters to be expedited. Direct these investigations towards the National Medicines Regulatory Authority because the network connected to this scam is still present at the NMRA, although the top heads have been removed.
The National People's Power clarified details about this matter today.
The National People's Power clarified details about this matter today. The Ministry of Health must accept the full responsibility for this. Everyone starting from the Minister of Health at the time of this scam are responsible for this corrupt deal. They cannot evade responsibility. Several officials have been arrested for their involvement in this matter. Some of them have been remanded. According to the information that we have received, several other officials of the Ministry of Health are to be arrested in the future. But there is one person who is above all of them. These drugs could not have been purchased without the advice and approval of the Minister of Health. These drugs have not been purchased under the regular procedure. When the officials at the Ministry of Health who were arrested had clearly said that they did everything on the advice of the Minister of Health, the CID has not even recorded a statement from the then Minister of Health.
Revelations regarding the erasing of sensitive data in the National Medicine Regulatory Authority were made today in a press briefing convened by the Samagijana Balavegaya.
තමුන්නාසල ඔක්කොම දන්නවා මේ ඖෂධ නියාමන අධිකාරිය හිටපු ගමන් දවසක් රෑ.
You all remember how sensitive data of the NMRA was abruptly erased overnight. Who is responsible for safeguarding this data in the NMRA? That is known as what did tell the CID. They said that the data was erased by an apprentice executive engineer. Can they save themselves by giving such an excuse? We can see that is getting all the protection from the Ranil Wickremesinghe government. The reason for all these are the thieves involved in the drug mafia. They're acting this way because of the damage done to the data. They're roaming around free and starting new ventures. They are trying to devalue the passport of an already bankrupt country. The passport tender was called in 2003 and the tender was in favor of this tender was 10 years, from 2003 to 2013. Even though new tender should have been called in 2013, the Rajapaksa clan secretly or in conclusion extended the contract given to. Now this is 2023 and this was a tender that was given in 2003. What has happened now? What has happened to our passport? Today Sri Lanka has made it to the last 10 in the list of most unsafe passports in the world. Why is that? Is it because we still use an ancient procedure that was introduced prior to 2003? Now amidst all of this, why are they getting together again? They have now gotten everything ready. Malaysian company is getting ready to purchase. This organization has been charged for money laundering. They have also been caught in a human trafficking racket in Bangladesh.
සමාගම මේ වෙනකොට මැලේසියාවේ මුදල් විසුද්ධීකරණය පිළිබඳව අහුවෙලා ඉන්නවා. ඒකම බංග්ලාදේශයේ මිනිස් ජාවාරමකට අහුවෙලා ඉන්නවා.
The Department of Registration of Persons announced plans to transition towards a digital identity card system, starting with new applicants from January 2024. This marks a significant step in modernizing national identification and streamlining administrative processes.
Minister, what's the update on the unique digital identity card? It was supposed to be completed at the end of this year.
Yeah, about 3 months ago we advertised that, and there were 2 bidders. None of them qualified. There were 2 from India. None of them qualified. And now we had this JPMC meeting last week also, and what we have decided is to advertise it again. So most probably end of this year we'll be able to advertise, and the procurement is done. So we'll be able to select a bidder next year, most probably within the first month.
When are you hoping to implement this project? When people will have the digital ID?
It will take time. First of all, you have to have the system, and then you have to capture data. You have to these are all in biometrics. So you have to capture data. It will take time, at least 1.5 years. Within 1.5 years, what we are trying to do right now is to parallelly to capture data as well, to collect data. So if we can do that, most probably within 1.5 years we'll be able to finish it.
These are revelations about the country's national airline that is facing a severe crisis. Now, although there were tenders called out for the sale of the company, the authorities have been unable to complete that process. Sri Lankan Airlines continues to be embroiled in several other crises as well.
The most recent incident was reported on the 17th. The flight that flew from Katunayaka to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, France, was delayed due to a technical fault on the aircraft. According to reports, this fault was due to some damage in the brakes and axle of the aircraft. The A330 aircraft, bearing number UL 563, is still parked at Charles de Gaulle International Airport in France. Meanwhile, the company's official website says that this aircraft is scheduled to return to Sri Lanka tomorrow. What is this aircraft issue? Including the plane that was landed in France due to mechanical issues, the total number of Sri Lankan planes that have been withdrawn from operations stands at 9. 5 of them have not been put into operation so far due to lack of necessary equipment. According to aviation sources, the maintenance work of 2 aircraft is currently underway. Aircraft engineers and technicians pointed out on several occasions in the past that the lack of staff has been a serious obstacle to these activities. Against such a backdrop, the company has not been able to start the maintenance work of one of the aircraft that faced technical issues. A shortage of aircraft technicians. From January 2022 until now, 138 experienced aircraft technicians have left the service category. A majority of them had resigned, a few had been promoted, and the rest had retired. Most of the people who had resigned has joined other airlines due to the current demand in the aviation market. When 475 flight technicians are needed, Sri Lankan Airlines now only has about 380 flight technicians left. It is reported that only 280 out of the 380 technicians are well experienced. Meanwhile, the licensed aircraft engineers of Sri Lankan Airlines recently said that around 40 of the 160 licensed aircraft engineers have left the country in the recent past.
Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara expressed views regarding the solar power project in Punakari during a media briefing at the President's Media Centre.
Australian investors, local and foreign investors had proposed to establish a project with a battery system in Punakari. Andhra Kumar Dissanayake raised various false allegations regarding this project. I corrected them in Parliament on the same day and called him for an open debate. He avoided it. I am prepared to come for a debate with him and a person nominated by him from the party at any given time. There is no use of having this debate without him because he raised the allegation. So I don't think it will be an issue for him to join a debate with me. There is a stance that this was an unsolicited proposal, that this was outside of the procurement process. That is untrue. Anyone can go to court. It has followed the procurement process since 2021. This is the letter sent to me by the Australian High Commissioner regarding the company. The Australian High Commissioner has also sent a letter to the opposition leader in response to the allegations he raised. SunGrow is the company known globally for battery system. So they have joined SunGrow for the technical expertise. We have received all information regarding the stakeholders who will join them, and they are high-level companies on a global scale.
Various views were expressed by the People's Struggle Movement during a press briefing today.
The president, who is on a mission to find money, sees all the roads, trees, water bodies, government institutions, government properties and corporations' potential dollars. So what does the president do? He goes to Horton Plains and look at ways of selling it. He goes to Nuwara, Haputale and Diathalawa and tries to sell post offices. They are selling the corporation in Polgolla. On the other hand, he is trying to sell everything to India, China and America. The people of this country should know that the whole of Trincomalee has been sold to India. The ground that was emptied by chasing away our people was given to India as well. Why is that? To create an economic energy zone. Beyond that, even the Sampur village, Trincomalee harbour and the Ashraf jetty have been given. 7,000 families have to be relocated. No alternate lands have been given to them. They are not just removing our own people through this, they are also giving our control of our energy sector to India. An oil pipeline is being brought from India to Trincomalee and then will give the tanks to India. India as well. After refining the oil, storing and making the oil, the same oil pipelines are brought to the West Terminal of the Colombo port. By bringing it to the West Terminal, India is trying to conduct an oil business in Sri Lanka. India is trying to make Sri Lanka its puppet. What are the contents of the Electricity Reform Act? When you look at the act, you can see that it has been construed in a way that it is most favourable to the Adani Group. The land in Mattala Airport have also been requested by the Indians. Adani is also getting ready to purchase Sri Lankan Airlines. NLDB and Milko are also being given to India. These are 32,000 acres. A group of Indian diplomats have come to Kuchuveli to measure the land required to ilmenite mining. When India is given a portion, it agitates China, who then asks for another portion. Now they are planning to give thousands of acres of land in the Hambantota to China to build a military base. When a Chinese vessel comes, India is unhappy, and when India is given land, China is unhappy. The issue is that Sri Lanka is going to be caught in between a power struggle of superpowers.
Vimal Veeravansa shared his views in a conference held in London.
In a year when a presidential election is scheduled to take place, what are they expecting by increasing taxes like this? IMF is using Ranil to increase the issues. They are doing that to build a society in which they turn a blind eye to all the destruction taking place, to create a society that is immune to all this. Only in such an immune society can you take such drastic measures. As long as the economic crisis is worsening, the society that will build is one that will be narrow-minded and only focused on self-survival. Now they are trying to depart from the traditional agricultural foundation and opt for a new commercial process by selling farmlands to multinational corporations. They are trying to worsen the crisis and act in a way that is most beneficial for foreign powers. Why are they asking to extend the SOFA and make way for American soldiers to come and go without following due process? Why is India asking consent to conduct special operations in Trincomalee? Ranil Wickremesinghe has a cunning mind. Now we are trapped by enemy forces. The best example is the Chinese research vessel. India is asking us to refuse permission, but after a week the vessel arrived. Then the foreign minister said that the vessel did not come to conduct any research activities, but to pump fuel. Then the next day it is reported that they have begun research activities. They are saying one thing to satisfy India and on the other hand saying another thing to satisfy China. This is only going to make things worse.
Sri Lanka has decided to have a one-year moratorium in allowing foreign vessels to conducting research in the Sea of Sri Lanka.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that despite a one-year moratorium being effective, the vessels can dock at the Sri Lankan port for other purposes. The decision was reached in the wake of China seeking permission to berth yet another research vessel, Siang Yang Hong 3, in Sri Lanka's waters next year. The Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka issued a notice that the Siang Yang Hong 3 will conduct research activities in the Sea of Sri Lanka from the 5th of January to the 20th of February.
Still in local news, trade unions launched a one-day strike today protesting against the privatization of Sri Lanka Telecom. Accordingly, protests were held opposite regional branches of the Sri Lanka Telecom as well.
Sri Lanka Telecom employees held a protest opposite the Colombo Fort head office today. They said attempts are being made to sell Sri Lanka Telecom to an Indian company.
We will launch an island-wide strike if the chairman and board of directors do not provide answers today. Are they protecting Sri Lanka? They are trying to hand over the Sri Lanka Telecom to India's Lanka Mobile. We will not allow the Ranil Rajapaksa government to sell the company we worked for our whole lives.
අපි කිසිසේත්ම අපේ ජීවත් වෙච්ච ආයතනය කිසිසේත්ම විකුණන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක මේ ආයතනයේ කොටස් 44.98% GTH holding.
44.98% of shares of this company are owned by a foreign company called GTH. The Sri Lankan government only owns 50.23% of shares. Majority of the directors are with the Sri Lankan government, but now they are reaching decisions with the Malaysian company. Several groups are clearly trying to weaken and destroy Sri Lanka Telecom to sell it at a low value and pocket commissions.
අධ්‍යක්ෂකවරු සමග එකතු වෙලා තීන්දුව తీරන ගන්න තත්ත්වයට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා. මෙන්න මේක තුල ඉතා පැහැදිලිව අපිට වෙන්නලා තියෙනවා. ටෙලිකොම් ආයතනය දුර්වල කරලා විනාශ කරලා වටිනාකම් අඩු කරලා ටෙලිකොම් ආයතනය තුට්ටු දෙකට මිලදී ගැනීමට සහ කොමිස් ගසා කෑමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන කණ්ඩායම් කිහිපයක් ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා කියන එක.
Sri Lanka Telecom employees held a protest opposite the Colombo Fort head office today. They said attempts are being made to sell Sri Lanka Telecom to an Indian company.
We will continue this fight until they change their decision and this corrupt, short-sighted board of directors is removed.
SLT employees also protested opposite the Northwestern Province SLT branch in Kurunegala. The group dispersed after protesting for around 1 hour.
The
employees of the Ambilipiti SLT office also protested against attempts to privatize the Sri Lanka Telecom.
Gypsies live in concert with Sirasa TV, where music meets the spirit of the season. Christmas with Gypsies. Back after 25 years to Vihara Mahadevi Open Air. Sirasa Flashtown 23 Gypsies live in concert. Featuring BNS, Hana and Nadima. Get your tickets now. Media sponsors Sirasa TV and TV1.
Former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga said politicians are the cause of Sri Lanka's unresolved conflicts. She expressed these views at Religion for Peace high-level meeting held in Colombo today.
One underlying major cause that has prevented peace or the resolution of conflictual situations seems to be not the people. For example, in Sri Lanka, I know the majority of our people do not want conflict, they do not want war. They want to live in peace and harmony with all the people of this country, with all citizens. But then why is there conflict? Why have we not been able to resolve this issue in a durable fashion? I would say very simply, it is the politicians. They have seen that as a very easy, facile slogan for them to win elections and continue to be in power. Then they use everybody else. It's not all the politicians, but a lot of them.
The United States has leveled up the fight against foreign bribery with landmark law to criminally prosecute corrupt foreign leaders.
In a landmark bipartisan move, the US Congress has approved the Foreign Extortion Prevention Act as part of the annual defense spending bill. This new law will make it a crime for foreign officials to solicit or accept bribes from Americans or American companies anywhere in the world. FEPA would make it a crime for a foreign official, including any employee of a foreign government or any current or former senior official of a foreign government's executive, legislative, judicial or military branches, or any immediate family member or close associate thereof, to demand or accept a bribe from an American or American company or from any person while in the territory of the United States in connection with obtaining or retaining business. Prior to this, US law only penalized American entities offering bribes, leaving the demand side largely unaddressed. This left corporations vulnerable to extortion and offered corrupt officials impunity. Scott Graytack, Director of Advocacy for Transparency International US, said that the United States government comes one critical step closer to helping provide real justice for victims of corruption around the world. The law has the potential to significantly disrupt the dynamics of global corruption by deterring bribe-demanding officials and holding them accountable. While FEPA awaits President Biden's signature, its passage marks a significant milestone in the fight against international corruption. This new tool, combined with continued domestic and international efforts, can bring transparency and accountability to areas plagued by illicit practices.
While Sri Lanka is experiencing an economic crisis, the rest of the world continues to move forward. The economic crisis is estimated to have taken Sri Lanka back at least 1 decade, and it is definitely a few years from now since we can at least get back to the position that Sri Lanka was in before the economic crisis began. But now, while we discuss on ways on how we can move forward from this economic crisis, come out of this bankruptcy that Sri Lanka is in at the moment, one singular point, one point of much importance that's overlooked is Sri Lanka's strategic location. Now, Sri Lanka's strategic location in the world gives us an advantage and a disadvantage. For an advantage, of course, Sri Lanka's strategic location can be used to develop Sri Lanka by increasing the naval travel, increasing air travel, using Sri Lanka's strategic position to Sri Lanka's advantage. But on the other hand, has Sri Lanka really used this strategic location to our advantage, or have we invariably become a pawn in the global tug of war by allowing foreign nations to occupy strategic assets here in Sri Lanka? Now let's take a look at Trincomalee. Now starting off in Trincomalee, Trincomalee is home to one of the most secure, one of the most important natural harbours in the world. Now the importance of the Trincomalee harbour was so much so that Britain used the Trincomalee harbour as one of their main harbours to refuel their ships. They even went on to build an oil farm in Trincomalee, which is the current Trincomalee oil farm. Moving on, discussions are ongoing, of course, to develop the Trincomalee harbour along with foreign partners. As to how much of a stake Sri Lanka will continue to have in the Trincomalee harbour is a question. Currently, the Trincomalee harbour is completely run by Sri Lanka, of course, owned by Sri Lanka. Now, also, serious concerns have been raised regarding the development of the Trincomalee district. Now, an agreement has been struck with India for the development of the Trincomalee district. The details of this agreement are not available to the general public, and I highly doubt the fact that even public representatives, politicians, members of parliament have been appraised of the exact details of how the development of the Trincomalee district is going to take place under this agreement that has been struck with India. Now moving on to Mannar. Now, large swathes of land in Mannar have been allocated to the Indian Adani company for the construction of power projects, including solar power projects. Now, there is also discussions ongoing in India, of course, to name the Adams Bridge area as an Indian national heritage. That's right, the Adams Bridge that is located between Thale Mannar and Dhanushkodi. India are holding discussions on naming this as an Indian cultural heritage. Let's move on now to the situation in the Jaffna district. Now, do you remember, under the Rajapaksa regime, there were attempts to allocate 3 islands in the Jaffna district to China for power projects? Well, guess what? Now these 3 islands have been handed over to India for a power project. These islands are Delf, Nainathivu and Analathivu islands, and these 3 islands have been given to India for a power project to be implemented there. There is also a place of archaeological importance in Kilinochchi that has been reserved for an Indian power project as well. Now, India is also involved in the development of the Palali airport and the Kankasanture port. Currently, India operates both aircrafts and ships from both of these ports, ferrying people, of course, from India to Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka to India. Now, let's move on to the situation of strategic assets located in the heart of Sri Lanka, Colombo, the financial hub of Sri Lanka. Now, the West Container Terminal, after much controversy, much debate, much opposition, was given to the Indian Adani company for development. Now, the West Container Terminal is being developed by the Indian Adani company jointly with the Sri Lankan company, using funds, financial assistance, of course, also from the United States. Now, the Colombo International Container Terminal, or the CICT terminal that is located adjacent to the West Container Terminal, has been run by a Chinese company. Right next to the CICT is the port city. Now, as you all know, the port city is being governed by a commission that was established by a separate act of parliament that was, mind you, if you remember correctly, hastily passed in parliament as an emergency bill at the time when it was passed. So the port city, of course, is also a project by China. Moving on, there are also plans, of course, to develop the port city as a financial hub in Sri Lanka. Let's now move on to the strategic assets of Sri Lanka in the Hambantota district. Now, the Hambantota port is owned by a Chinese company. Now, despite disagreements on how many shares Sri Lanka owns and how many shares China owns in the Hambantota port,
What is undisputed is the fact that China holds a majority of the shares in the company that's running the operations at the Hambantota port, and also by virtue of that shares in the lion's share of the benefit of the profits that's earned by the Hambantota port as well. The Mattala airport, the much celebrated airport in Hambantota, when it was of course constructed, was also constructed using funds from China. However, as we all know, the Mattala airport is not generating an income sufficient to pay back the loans that were taken for the construction of the Mattala airport. And now discussions are ongoing on running the operations at the Mattala airport as a joint venture between a Russian and an Indian company. Now, these are only just a very few of the strategic assets in Sri Lanka that have been mishandled, given to foreign countries, and now Sri Lanka is in a soup. Now, discussions are ongoing currently to sell many more strategic assets here in Sri Lanka, including several state-owned enterprises. Now, these include the Sri Lanka Telecom, the CEB, Milco, NLDB, Litrogas, Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation, and Sri Lankan Airlines are just a few among those state-owned enterprises that are to be sold. Now, portions of the Petroleum Corporation also have been sold out, with recently several fuel stations being given to foreign companies and those foreign companies have now entered the fray, or the petroleum retail market here in Sri Lanka. Now, of course, the sale of these important strategic assets to foreign investors in the guise of bringing foreign investment into Sri Lanka could land Sri Lanka in a situation where we are stuck between a rock and a hard place as a victim of this global tug of war in geopolitics.
With the people.
The presidential election should be held next year according to the constitution. Now, several potential candidates have expressed their intention to contest the presidential election. However, two senior members of the United National Party said today that Ranil Wickremesinghe will be the next president.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, leader of the National People's Power Anurukumara Dissanayake, businessman Dilip Javira, Dhammika Pereira and former chairman of the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, Janaka Ratnayake, have already expressed their willingness to enter the next presidential battle. Will Ranil Wickremesinghe also join the presidential battle? Two senior members of the United National Party responded to this question.
Presidential battle.
ජාතිය කුඩේ කුඩු වෙලා වෙනසිච්ච ජාතියක් තමයි රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනාධිපතිතුමා ජාතික නායකයා හැටියට ඉදිරියට ගෙනියන්න.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe is trying to take forward a nation that was destroyed. We listened to the criticism and continued the process because we believed that only Ranil Wickremesinghe could do it. He is a leader who has faced around 70 elections. No other leader in the world has the same experience. The Sri Lankan nation shouldn't have any doubt in 2024 that if he is allowed to lead this country for 12 years, Sri Lanka will become a powerful nation in Asia. If not, our nation will be in a bad place. If any leader of our country goes beyond 5 years, he will either face an untimely death or he will be destroyed politically. Then Sri Lankan people should not do it. Some people say Ranil Wickremesinghe is blessed to be president. In fact, he is a blessing to the nation.
පිනක් මෙන් ජීවත් වීමේ වාග්ය උදා කරලා තිබෙන්නේ.
පුදුමාවේ ජ්‍යොතිෂවේදීකට එහාගේ තොරතුරු අනාගත ලබනා බුද්ධ නැතිවරණ වර්ෂයක් මුලින් වෙන ජනාධිපතිවරණයේද පාර්ලිමේන්තු මැතිවරණයේද පළාත් සභාව.
මම හිතන්නේ ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාව අනුව රටක අස්ථාවරභාවයක් ඇති වුණාම ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාව.
According to the constitution, when there is instability in the country, the president can choose the right time to hold an election. It includes the legal drafts to be followed for the presidential election and the parliamentary election. If we go for a presidential election next year without allowing for an election that will destroy the country based on the foreign interest with the people's issues but based on the needs of the Sri Lankan people, the people who suffered in fuel queues will vote for Ranil Wickremesinghe. The issue is not over yet. President Ranil Wickremesinghe will be elected as president with around 10 million votes in excess. saying that Ranil Wickremesinghe can do this was not a joke. It was a deliberate statement based on a clear prediction of Sri Lanka's status in April of next year, because our leader is an economic expert and not just a politician.
පක්ෂ නායකයා දේශපාලඥයෙකුට එහා ගිය ආර්ථික විශේෂඥ දේශපාලඥයෙකු නිසා ඔහු යන ගමන් මඟ ගැන පැහැදිලි නිසා තමයි කියලා තියෙන්නේ ඡන්ද ලක්ෂ 100ක් අරගෙන ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ජනාධිපති පුටුවේ මහ ජනතාව වාඩි කරන්න කටයුතු කරනවා.
Presidential battle.
ජනාධිපතිවරයා වශයෙන් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ නිර්පාක්ෂික දේශපාලන ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් වශයෙන් කටයුතු කිරීම අනිවාර්යයි.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe will run for presidential election as a non-partisan political member. This is to work with all parties. Many are willing to compete. The number of people who are willing to lead the country through challenging times are limited. The country needs to be taken out of this abyss. Ranil Wickremesinghe needs to work with the people's well-wishers, the international community, with a good understanding.
වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනතාවේ තියෙන සුතුම් පැතුම් ජාත්‍යන්තර සහ අවබෝධයක් සහිතව කටයුතු කිරීම තමයි අවශ්‍ය.
The Deputy Legal Secretary of the Samagi Janabalawegya expressed these views at a press briefing today.
මූලික අයිතිවාසිකම් කඩ කරා කියලා මූලික අයිතිවාසිකම් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඉහළම තීන්දුව දෙන ලංකාවේ ඉහළම අධිකරණය විසින් වග උත්තරකාරයෙක් කරලා ඒකට
Can a person who was named as a respondent and was found guilty of violating fundamental rights by the highest court in the country hold the office of acting Inspector General? That is the issue here. We should discuss that. As a lawyer, my belief is that this cannot happen. What are the fundamental rights that were violated by him? He is in breach of Article 11 of the Constitution. He has taken steps to inhumanely torture individuals. He has also violated the due process that needs to be followed when arresting individuals. Against such a backdrop, is he suitable to hold the office of the Acting Inspector General of Police? Now, when we say this, they will counter it with the recent drug raid launched by the police and say that we are trying to sabotage it. That is not the case. It is because of this that we said from the beginning that he is unsuited for the position of the Inspector General of Police. The Supreme Court in their ruling held that he is guilty of violating fundamental rights. The Inspector General who takes his oath before the Constitution is guilty of violating the same Constitution. Are you going to continue his tenure? We can't expect anything more from a president that protects the Rajapaksas.
ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාව ඉස්සරහ තියාගෙන දියුරුම් දෙන පොලිස්පති ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාව කඩ කරලා නම් තව දුරටත් ඔහුව පවත්වාගෙන යනවද නැද්ද? ඒ වගේම තමයි මන්නම් හිතන්නේ මේ රාජපක්ෂල රකින්නවා වගේම තමයි මේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහගෙන් ඊට වැඩිය දෙයක් අපිට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
In other local news, Operation Yuktiya was effective across several parts of Sri Lanka today.
An operation to combat drug traffic was carried out in Elugala, Kurunegala from 4 a.m. today. The police and special task force arrested 2 suspects along with narcotics during the operation. 3 suspects were also arrested along with ice and heroin worth 1.2 million rupees from Kappagoda, Mavanala today. Another person was arrested for the possession of over 1 kilogram of Kerala ganja from a house in Hinguragoda.
ඇටලීම් 2210ක් සිදු කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම අත්අඩංගුවට ගැනීම තියෙනවා ස්ට්‍රිං කාන්තාවන්.
A total of 2,210 operations were conducted. 88 females and 2,078 males were arrested. Many suspects wanted for previous offences are included in this. Many suspects were arrested over suspicious behaviour during the night. Detention orders were also obtained for 66 suspects.
මේ වන විට රඳවා ගැනීමේ නියෝග ලබාගෙන තවදුරටත් ප්‍රශ්න කිරීමට කටයුතු කරලා තියෙනවා 66 දෙනෙක් සම්බන්ධයෙන්.
Vehicles worth over 67 million rupees was also seized during operations carried out by the Illegal Assets and Property Investigation Unit of Sri Lanka Police in the past 24 hours. Acting IGP Deshabandhu Tennakone also inspected these vehicles.
ගත වෙච්ච පැය 24 තුළ මේ යුක්තිය මෙහෙයුම යටතේ මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය ජාවාරණ සහ
The police has seized the vehicles that were in the possession of the drug traffickers and organized criminals. The police will inspect the houses of 3,320 drug traffickers identified through this network. Some of them have fled the country. Some of them are hiding, but they can't hide their houses or other belongings. The police is taking steps to seize these.
The Discovery, a photographic exhibition unveiled in Colombo yesterday in aid of the SOS Children's Villages. An exhibition showcasing over 500 entries organized by the Streets of Colombo Photographers Collective unveiled in Colombo yesterday. Discovery was organized in aid of the SOS Children's Village. This exhibition is more than just a display of stunning photographs celebrating the spirit of Colombo. Each photograph captured by the talented participants offers a unique glimpse into the city's vibrant tapestry, where ancient traditions and modern life collide in a symphony of colors, textures and emotions.
I've had this idea for a few years now to go on a quest to try and discover who he was.
Why did you have to go for something like this?
I want them to see this film and say, oh my God, this country is beautiful.
Was there a motive behind this whole documentary to promote tourism?
It was an unintended consequence, I'd say, Maria. And so when I started this film, I had an idea of a story. But when I ended it, I had a whole different understanding of who he was.
20 years later, we are still finding every opportunity to honor the genius of the place.
Newsfirst exclusive with writer and director of The Genius of the Place of the Laziz. 5th of January 2024 from 9:30 p.m. onwards on TV1. Streaming live on Newsfirst YouTube and Facebook channels.
In news overseas, Pope Francis has allowed priests to bless same-sex couples, a significant advance for LGBT people in the Roman Catholic Church.
Pope Francis said priests should be permitted to bless same-sex and irregular couples under certain circumstances. But the Vatican said blessings should not be part of regular church rituals or related to civil unions or weddings. It added that it continues to view marriage as between a man and a woman. Pope Francis approved a document issued by the Vatican announcing the change today. The Vatican said it should be a sign that God welcomes all, but the document says priests must decide on a case-by-case basis.
In sports news, Dilshan Madhushanka and Manithu Hasaranga have been selected for the 16th edition of the Indian Premier League to be held in 2024.
The IPL auction 2024 was held in Dubai today. Manithu Hasaranga, Kusal Mendes, Dasun Shanaka, Charit Asalanka, Dushmanta Chamira, Lahiru Kumara, Dilshan Madhushanka and Nuwan Tushara were among Sri Lankans auctioned at the event. Dilshan Madhushanka was the most expensive buy among Sri Lankans at approximately 180 million Sri Lankan rupees. Manithu Hasaranga was purchased by Sunrisers Hyderabad for 1.5 crore Indian rupees, which is approximately 58 million Sri Lankan rupees. Sunrisers Hyderabad managed to bag Australian captain Pat Cummins for a whopping 20.5 crores Indian rupees, which is approximately 800 million Sri Lankan rupees. It was the most expensive buy in an IPL auction at the time of purchase. However, Kolkata Knight Riders managed to break this record a few hours later, purchasing fellow teammate of the Aussie captain Mitchell Starc for a massive 24.75 crores Indian rupees, which is approximately 980 million Sri Lankan rupees. Kusal Mendes remained unsold at the auction.
Well, that wraps up tonight's edition of Primetime News. I'm Ravi Gamage.
I'm Naveksha Gunasekar. For all these stories and much more, you can visit our website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. Thank you for watching. Good night.